When asked about his family life, Michael Morton says, "I've often felt how almost excruciatingly average we were, a chunk out of a demographic study. The house, the yard, the kid, the car. We had everything but the picket fence. It was good." And then, in 1986, his entire world was flipped upside down when his wife was murdered in their bed. On August 12, 1986, Michael Morton celebrated his birthday at a restaurant with his wife, Christine, and their 3-year-old son, Eric. The next morning, Morton left a note in the bathroom expressing disappointment that his wife had declined to be intimate with him the night before, but ended the note with the words, "I love you." He then left for work at about 5:30 in the morning, arriving soon after. Later that day, the Mortons' neighbor noticed their son outside alone. They went to go look for Christine Morton, and when the neighbor entered the Mortons' home, they found her dead in the bedroom. Her body was found on the bed under a comforter with a basket and suitcase on top of it. She had been bludgeoned to death with what appeared to have been a wooden weapon that was never recovered. Also, the sheets that she laid on were stained with what was later determined to be semen. Michael Morton's son, Eric, had been present during the murder. He described the crime scene and murder in great detail and specifically said that his, quote, "daddy was not home," end quote, when the murder occurred. Police questioned Morton's neighbors and were told that a man had repeatedly parked a green van on the street behind the Morton's house and walked off into a nearby wooded area. Police records also indicated that Christine Morton's missing credit card had possibly been recovered in a San Antonio, Texas jewelry store, and that a San Antonio officer stated that he could identify the woman who attempted to use the card. Police also found a bloody bandana at a construction site located about 100 yards from the Morton home. However, despite all this evidence, the police hypothesized that Morton had beaten Christine to death because she refused to have sex with him on his birthday. When it came time for the trial, the prosecution presented no witnesses or physical evidence that could have tied Morton to the crime. The prosecution hypothesized and used the note Morton left that morning, which read, "Chris, I know you didn't mean to, but you made me feel really unwanted last night. After a good meal, we came home, you binged on the rest of the cookies, then with your nightgown around your waist, and while I was rubbing your hands and arms, you farted and fell asleep. I'm not mad or expecting a big production. I just want you to know how I feel without us getting into another fight about sex. Just think about how you would have felt if you were left hanging on your birthday. I love you, Michael." The prosecution stated that Morton tried to make the scene of the crime that of one of a robbery. There was also testimony by medical examiner Dr. Roberto Bayardo. He says that the time of death could have been no later than 1:15 a.m. based on the context of her stomach. However, he also said that this was not a scientific statement. Throughout his prison sentence, Morton maintained his innocence, through and through. In 2005, the Innocent Project and law firm Rayleigh and Bowick filed a motion requesting additional DNA testing on items of evidence from the crime scene. The court allowed for some evidence to be tested. The bloody bandana, however, was not one of these pieces of evidence. DNA could not exclude Morton from the bed sheets yet again, which is not really a surprise as they were his own bed sheets. In 2011, testing was granted on the bandana and hair from the bandana, finally. A DNA testing lab reported that testing on the bandana revealed both Christine Morton's DNA as well as the DNA of an unknown male. The DNA was then run through a DNA database and matched Mark Norwood, a convicted felon from California who had a criminal record in Texas and who lived in Texas at the time of Christine Morton's murder. After these pieces of DNA evidence were brought forward, Michael Morton was finally released on October 4th, 2011, after spending nearly 25 years in prison. He was finally officially exonerated on December 19th of the same year.
You are released subject to the terms and conditions of the bond.
Michael Morton, now a free man after spending 25 years in a Texas prison for a murder he did not commit. He walked out of the Williamson County Courthouse surrounded by his family this afternoon. Our Shannon Wolfson was at the courtroom today. She's live with reaction from Georgetown and Michael Morton just moments after he was set free. Shannon?
Robert, 25 years ago, Michael Morton walked out of a Williamson County courthouse and he told reporters as adamantly as he could, "I did not do this." Well, it took 25 years, but new DNA evidence proved he was telling the truth. You know, I've got to admit, even as a reporter, it is hard to describe what it's like watching someone gain their freedom who's been wrongfully imprisoned for 25 years. So we thought we would just show you the best we could, some of the sights and sounds from the courtroom today.
You do have my sympathies. You have my apologies. We don't have a perfect system of justice, but we have the best system that is available in the world. And you are released subject to the terms and conditions of the bond.
I think.
Okay. Take your time.
I thank God this wasn't a capital case. That I only had life. Because it gave the saints here at the Innocence Project time to do this. Colors seem real bright to me now. The women are real good looking.
This is one of the happiest days of my life, and I thank God for it.
We're so thankful the truth finally came out.
Yes.
And we're happy, happy, happy.
We were always hopeful. Always hopeful. Never gave up hope.
Michael, I prayed for it, and I had faith that it would arrive.
Yes. Yes. Always.
Michael Morton telling us he never gave up hope that this day would come. He is clearly a faithful man from a faithful family, and they have a lot of catching up to do. We're live in Georgetown. Shannon Wolfson, KXAN News.
When the defense attorneys learned that the prosecution did not plan to call Sergeant Don Woods, the chief investigator in the case, to the stand, they suspected that the prosecution might be concealing evidence that could potentially prove Morton's innocence. The defense raised this concern with the trial judge, who ordered the prosecution to turn over all reports by Sergeant Woods so that he could conduct a thorough review. However, this was not the case. With Morton's conviction, a jury felt they had performed their civic duty and made the world a safer place. However, the jury had limited access of information during the trial. Neither the jury nor the defense lawyers were made aware of the evidence concealed by Williamson County law enforcement. The bloody bandana, the recovery of Kristen Morton's credit card in San Antonio jewelry store, and the interview police conducted with the 3-year-old son, Eric Morton, were all left out by law enforcement. During the course of the post-conviction DNA litigation, Morton's attorneys filed the Public Information Act request and finally obtained the other documents showing Morton's innocence in the prosecution's file that had been withheld at the trial. The Texas Supreme Court ordered an unprecedented court of inquiry to determine whether Ken Anderson, the former prosecutor who went on to become a judge, had committed misconduct. The court of inquiry ruled there to be probable cause to believe Anderson had violated criminal laws by concealing evidence and charged him with criminal contempt. In November of 2013, Anderson entered a plea to criminal contempt and agreed to serve a 10-day jail sentence. He then resigned from his position as district court judge and permanently surrendered his law license. As well, the testimony of Dr. Roberto Bayardo was not reliable enough to scientifically state that this is when she died, as the contents of the stomach are a result of many variables, such as stress, how much one has eaten that day, alcohol, as well as many other factors. This did not, however, stop Anderson from saying that this was the exact time of death and that it was scientifically proven Morton as the killer. It is also a terrifying crime for such a small community, so it makes it easier to think that a man just snapped rather than the possibility of a serial killer being on the loose and at large. The sheriff also made a statement in the local newspaper saying that there should not be a panic about a serial killer, that the police have a good idea on who did it, and that they were going to make an arrest soon. The following interview clearly shows guilt and remorse of a juror, as well as the disgust of not having been presented all the evidence by the Crown.
One of the 12 jurors who convicted Morton witnessed his release today. She thought it would help her deal with the shock of sending the wrong person to prison. As KXAN's Aaron Cargyle reports, she's not blaming herself.
Lou Bryan has saved every newspaper article she's read recently about new revelations in the Michael Morton case.
So I thought, oh my gosh, they're bringing this up again?
The retired high school English teacher sat on the jury back in 1987.
I told almost every senior class after that about this trial, and in a lot of detail sometimes, and always thinking that we were right.
For Bryan, convincing testimony from a forensic specialist about the autopsy weighed heavy in her decision that suggested Christine Morton was killed while Michael was still home because food she'd eaten the night before was still in her system.
We all pretty much came up with a guilty verdict within a couple of hours, I thought.
And she stood by that verdict until Tuesday morning when she read about the new DNA connecting another man to the crime.
Oof, that's what I thought. We did the wrong thing. And I felt guilty.
While Bryan is overcome with emotion, she is not blaming herself. She wants to know why jurors were never told Christine's credit card was used 2 days after her death, or that a check made out to Christine was cashed 2 weeks after she died. And prosecutors never told jurors Michael and Christine's 3-year-old son told a family member his daddy wasn't home when his mother was killed.
I just feel like there was a lot missing, and we should have known something more. And if that's the way it works in our system, then there's something wrong.
If Bryan had the chance to talk to Michael today.
Yesterday I wouldn't have said anything. Today I would say I'm sorry.
In Round Rock, Aaron Cargyle, KXAN News.
Morton was given $1.9 million in compensation as well as a monthly annuity of $12,000. Morton has worked long and hard to forgive those who were instrumental in his wrongful conviction. The following interview is with Michael Morton, and it is detailing his struggles for inner peace as well as life after prison.
There were many years where I was very, very angry. I spent a number of years on the inside plotting the murders of the people who were responsible for my incarceration. I knew who they were. I mean, the irony wasn't lost to me. I'm in prison for life, for murder that I hadn't done, and yet I'm plotting all these things. And I knew that I had to, supposed to forgive those people, but the truth of it was I didn't want to.
Michael Morton, now a free man after spending 25 years in a Texas prison for a murder he did not commit. He walked out of the Williamson County Courthouse surrounded by his family this afternoon.
In a very remarkable period of time while he was in prison, Michael changed. By the time he came out of prison, he was the man that I met.
If you want to be forgiven, you have to forgive. You do it for yourself. You don't do it for everybody. It was about me. Those murders that I was plotting were right in front of me. I consciously, deliberately, took that first one on the list and said, I forgive you. To release that kind of stuff was wonderful. But I've learned that it's easier to forgive someone for something they've done to you than it is to forgive somebody for something they've done to someone else.
You promise the testimony that you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Please have a seat, please.
Something had happened to my wife. She had called, so something's wrong, and so of all the bad things that could have happened, I didn't know if anything happened to my son. Okay. So I asked about him first.
Okay.
I know in my mind I'll get to a point where I can forgive him, but I also have to be candid enough to tell anybody who asks that I'm not there yet. Your trial is what makes you. Cancer, unemployment, bankruptcy. When you come out on the other side of that, when you're able to look back and sort of assess what it meant and where I am now, that's the important thing. Because it makes you who you are.